perhaps if you can kick us off and telling us about your career so far.
Yeah, absolutely, Dan. So I've had a very interesting career since 2004 when I graduated college. I have jumped around into every aspect of the utility industry. So I started in transmission and distribution, and then went into generation on the coal and gas-fired side. And then during the Constellation Exelon merger, ended up in working in legal, working in a shop where we were actually creating things for the different power plants, and then took a turn into renewables on the wind side, and followed by hydro now. So it's been a really interesting career. I do want to say one thing that's cool as folks are looking for other jobs is that a large company is a way to go in my mind, because you can stay in that company and grow while also doing something different every 2-3 years. I found that to me was the coolest part about a large company.
What kind of projects, or potentially what was your favorite plant? I assume you've worked with lots of different power facilities over the time. What are some notable standout ones over your career?
Yeah, there's so many that have been interesting for a variety of reasons. I think that one of the coolest ones was a biomass facility in California, where we actually built it for the city of Los Angeles to be behind the meter, to power all of the behind the meter activities that they had at a wastewater treatment plant. So as you know, California is a very high-priced area for energy. So to build something for them that could take all of their energy needs using anaerobic digesters was really interesting. So that way they have cut down their utility needs to almost nothing. So 26 megawatt combined cycle. So we called it a baby combined cycle. Really neat plant to manage. I managed that for some time, and right off the Pacific Coast Highway. So it was a great way to leave every day, where you just hang a left and you're right in the Pacific Ocean. It was pretty awesome all around.
Awesome. I guess you've probably seen quite a few changes then over that career path. How has, we'll take a snapshot of the last 10 years been? So from an outsider looking in who's not on a power plant, we've been recruiting into them for a long time. There's been lots of legislation changes that have driven changes on plant. What are the most notable things that you've seen over the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's funny that you asked for 10 years in particular, because the 10 years were full cycle. And what I mean by that is that I remember being hired in about 10 years into the generation aspects, and it was booming. We were building gas plants, coal was still big, oil was around, and energy consumption was increasing. But then it flatlined and declined when energy savings was a big push all around, and generation was a dying industry. Truly, none of my friends were going into it that had a background that they were looking at other alternatives. It felt like it was shrinking, and we were closing plants, and it didn't feel good, right? And now we're in this huge boom between solar, wind, hydro, where I'm at right now, back to where it was when I started. So when you say that, with all the energy policies that were changing, if you look at the last 10 years, it was booming to try and meet demand. Then it was decreasing demand, so therefore generation was decreasing. And now it's booming again to where AI and other things are really in high demand, and we need power plants to power them. So, in terms of that 10 years, it's been full circle.
Yeah, definitely. That makes sense. If we were to condense that 10-year cycle down potentially into the last year or even currently, what are the main challenges that the industry is facing at the moment, do you think?
Great question. What I'm seeing is that we are having an influx of people that are retiring. And because of that downward trend before the last year, where it was shrinking and people were leaving, we're having a plethora of folks that are leaving with a lot of knowledge. And so when you're bringing in a lot of folks now, we're looking for people that have somewhat of a big knowledge in this industry, or have an aptitude to learn quickly, right? So we're not really finding folks that have that background. So it's more of finding an aptitude to learn and be able to be nimble and learn different technologies quickly, because we're not sure what the next big thing is, right? So we have to be able to work on a wind turbine or a hydro turbine or a solar panel right now, along with our gas turbines. It's all encompassing, right? So I'd say within the last year, it's trying to hire the right folks that have the right mindset and less the experience.
That makes sense. So I think if we're talking about hiring, currently working in hydro, what are the main skill sets that potentially you and other colleagues might be facing? You know, what are the real hard to fill jobs currently?
On the technical side, what I'm finding is that we're looking to hire people that are not specialized. I'm not looking for an electrical engineer that's just going to be electrical, because you never know what's going to happen. And you're going to need to rely on someone technical like an engineer to do multiple things. So we just hired on an individual straight out of school who had more of a systems approach, where they can do civil engineering, but have also a really strong mechanical background to help out on some of the mechanical aspects of the dam, along with the civil aspects, which is very important for dam safety. So I personally am looking for somebody who can be nimble, who can actually fill many roles and grow into that in their career. I look back and I have a master's in systems engineering, which is truly just the connection of other engineering aspects into a whole system. And so that's what I'm looking for, is someone with that aptitude to be able to connect all the dots and really help us grow in what we're doing here at Conowingo and Muddy Run.
I think if we looked in the past, and if we're looking forward, what, I guess, key changes are coming down the pipe, excuse the pun, for the hydro sector over the next 5 years, do you think?
I think what's interesting for the hydro sector is that it's a sleeping giant. And what I mean by that is that it hasn't really evolved all that much within the last 50 years. And when I look at my peers and others out there in the industry that look to take long outages to do a lot of work, they're becoming more like an independent power producer, and they're looking to start working things 24/7 to bring back units, or they're looking to just be more tied to the economics of the dam, instead of just taking for granted that the dam will always be there and that we'll just run when we run and we'll match river flow instead of match economics. I'm seeing a lot of those changes recently, and it's fascinating. And something else that we're really looking for is a good financial acumen along with that. I was lucky enough to sit on our trade floor for a few years and learn how the traders look at our assets. So when I'm sitting here at a hydro site, you can see behind me my lovely river. It really helps because I can bring the business side to operations. And I think that that's something that's going to be very important, more forward-looking, that you're going to start seeing in a lot of places.
I think one thing, going back to talent, is the draw for candidates to look at other sectors. So sometimes people might go renewable energy, people's minds go to solar, they go to wind, and they're pushed that way sometimes as well. How can hydro compete to get the best minds and the best talent into the industry if those changes are coming? We're going to need good people to run and operate these facilities.
Absolutely. I think it's a really exciting time in that we're trying to optimize the hydro facilities, and we're starting to see more money being put into them to either upgrade them or to make them more reliable, which we haven't seen in the past. And so it's easy to follow the money, as I say, right? So if money's being poured into it, there's going to be a lot of opportunity. Whereas right now, solar and wind have a lot of money going to them for different reasons that may or may not always be there, but dams are always gonna be there. And I think it's a vitally important part of the generation portfolio because they have a lot of black start resources. So what I mean by that is that there's always going to be some amount of water when the grid really needs it in an emergency, that they're going to be the first to be called upon. So it's exciting to be involved in something that is vitally important to the grid, whereas solar and wind are seen as something that's growing and something that we're definitely going to need as the mix, but hydro is vitally important to how the grid operates moving forward.
And I guess to finish up then, what advice, if you to look back through your career, what advice would you give a younger version of yourself as you're starting on that journey?
Dan, I thought about that because I was thinking about what questions you might ask me. And what I found is that anytime I was given an opportunity that scared me, I knew that I had to take it. And so when I look back, I think I would have told my younger self to just go for it instead of hem and haw before doing it, because I've always learned something new, and it made me a better person and it made me a better employee for the company by jumping into something that was terrifying because I knew nothing about it. So sitting on the trade floor when I knew nothing about traders was terrifying, but exhilarating because I was able to ask silly questions that, I knew that I didn't know something. And so to ask a silly question, some people might be afraid of doing, right? Because you're sort of raising your hand and saying, hey, I'm scared of this and I don't know something, which is hard for people to admit, right? But when you're put into a position where everyone knows you don't know, it's awesome because you could say like, oh, well, I know I'm gonna fail, so here we go. And I just start asking questions away, right? And learn from it. Even in my role now as the plant manager for 2 dams, I knew nothing about the intricacies of how the dams operated. I knew generally water in, water out, and you make megawatts, right? But there's so much that goes into it day to day that terrified me, but I knew that meant I had to go do it, right? So I think that's a good advice for anyone that is gonna read this, but more importantly, just looking back on myself, the younger me definitely made those right decisions. I just think I would have jumped 2 feet in instead of 1 foot and then, jump off from there. You know what I mean?